WildStar is an interesting take on a very tired genre. Developed by Carbine Studios, a team largely consisting of ex-World of Warcraft devs, the game promises above all else a punishing PvE experience. It has been very much promoted as a hardcore title, and us gamers aren't getting any younger. So, is WildStar an engaging enough adaptation of the traditional hotkey MMO to draw an audience large enough to fully realise its potential? I've played the majority of classes to level 10, the medic and spellslinger to 20, enough to experience the questing content, alongside adventures and the first set of dungeons. There is not a lack of things to do while levelling, but that's not to say the content that is there is particularly innovative. Much of it does very much seem like an iterative improvement over what I consider to be the last generation of MMOs. Questing involves the typical go here, kill this, collect item, talk to them kind of tasks, which is less than interesting, but each small story, each new task flows into the next effortlessly, and at no point during my time with WildStar did I find myself confused in regards to how I should progress. Where I should get my next set of quests was always incredibly clear, providing I did not venture far from the specific zone quests. Each of these takes you through a story arc which leads from one quest hub to another, ensuring you've always got plenty of tasks to choose from. An MMO levelling experience often dictates the number of players that reach the level cap. I'm not sure if WildStar's quests are engaging enough to really capture the attention of its target demographic, that being MMO veterans. This of course won't stop people reaching the endgame. We are conditioned by our previous experiences. Questing has just become a blur. Hundreds of tasks are accepted and completed, without a second thought given to the backstory. I don't believe WildStar will be any different, but it has very much tried to grab people's attention. Cutscenes break the general tedium of questing and help with exposition, but much of the world's lore is conveyed through written text. This text is gathered as you adventure through the world, which really makes discovering a new piece of the planet's history very interesting. But it's still a slab of text, and unless you've really committed to learning about the game's lore, it'll just become another task for completionists. So, while the game's lore may not be enough to motivate one to quest, the combat very much is. From a low level, you are quickly introduced to the telegraph system. Gone is the day of the tab target MMO. Most of the abilities in WildStar can be considered skill shots, and they come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes. Attacks and even heals must be aimed at the correct target. It makes the combat feel engaging and responsive. It's very much action orientated, and it's largely owed to the sprint and dodge mechanics. The combat is quick and hectic. I've never found myself waiting for a cooldown. In fact, the game is paced so well that there's very little downtime once you've unlocked your full bar of abilities. The devs have made it very obvious that they want this game's PvE to be challenging. This attitude is not exclusive to the end game, and in fact, it's very much relevant during the leveling experience. It remains to be seen, however, if the combat is engaging enough to carry the experience until the level cap. The game starts seemingly very tame, but by the time you reach level 10, it's thrown so many different telegraphed attacks at you. You feel prepared for anything that could conceivably be implemented into an MMO, right? No. Nothing can prepare you for this kind of difficulty spike. Sure, you might die while questing from time to time, but when you get access to the first of WildStar's adventure content, the game's true potential really starts to show through. Adventures are meant to be dynamic, 5-man experiences. Each run-through is supposed to be a little different. Once in an adventure, you are given a choice. Each player must vote on which new task they want the group to attempt, and while these adventures can be considered an introduction to WildStar's true PvE, they are far from forgiving. The game's telegraph system starts to make sense. At first it can come across as a method which simplifies the game's combat. Rather than not standing in the fire, everything becomes about not standing in the red telegraph. But don't let that fool you. It's just allowed for a level of complexity to be implemented into every fight that's not present in other MMOs. A video by the developer claimed that no online guide will prepare you for the randomised chaos. And while this seems like a bold claim at the time, it's not all that far from the truth, in low level content at least. While after 4 or 5 playthroughs, adventures start to lose their charm, they certainly warrant multiple runs. I found myself caring very little for the loot rewards, and more for the group experience. WildStar very much promotes teamwork, and that's readily apparent. 5 levels after unlocking the first adventure, 2 dungeons become available, and you'll need to make use of all you've learned. The difficulty spike feels very much like that of going from quests to adventures. New mechanics such as the armor interrupt system are properly introduced. Everything in this game feels like it's there to promote a team mentality. No one person can carry a dungeon run. Everyone has to be on point, or many of the bosses just seem impossible. The first dungeon I attempted was called Stormtalon's Lair. The first boss, Bladewind the Invoker, has 3 phases. These phases aren't easy either. They each have their own unique mechanics, and considering this is the first instance you can access, I was taken back by what was presented before me. We spent an hour on this boss, figuring out its mechanics, learning how to best position ourselves, and working out the right moveset for each player. By the end of it, I cared very little for what the boss yielded. I was just overwhelmed with what we deemed to be a real accomplishment for our ragtag group. This leads on to another interesting topic, character building. Unlike other MMOs, you're not locked into any specific talent tree. Each class has 3 trees, each with 9 abilities. Any combination of these can be selected to make up your 8 moves. At first, this system appears restrictive, and I still think it is, but being able to switch out any of your moves on a whim goes some way towards compensating. Each of these abilities can also have 8 passive upgrades. Most of these are improvements such as X amount of additional damage. Upgrade 4 and 8, however, often completely change how the move functions, and I found no one combination of skills was one size fits all. And that brings me on to the game's PvP content. WildStar sticks to the tried and tested battleground. At level 20 I had access to 2. I found Walatiki Temple to be the most engaging of these. It's a take on the traditional capture the flag game mode, however Carbine Studios have done what they do best, and iteratively improved upon the formula, resulting in a very interesting game mode with more depth than your average battleground. Masks can spawn in multiple positions along the centre of the map at random, and while a battle rages over who collects it, it's possible to infiltrate behind enemy lines and steal one of the opposing team's masks. More often than not, this makes the game a back and forth, rather than a clean stomp for any one team. Issues can arise with the mask spawning system. While in a traditional CTF, the flag's location is known, and everyone can focus on taking that specific point. In Walatiki, the position is randomised. Rather than fighting over the mask, it can become about sheer dumb luck, being at the right spawn at the right time. In a pre-made with decent communication, this may not be so much an issue, but for a pug found through the group finder, it's pretty common. The first battleground is made available from a low level, and it's a nice way to break the tedium of questing. The XP rewards aren't all that bad either. I've really enjoyed my time with WildStar, but I can't help myself worry about the game's future. I'm not sure the questing experience is enough to drive a player base with an ever-decreasing amount of free time, all the way to the level cap, myself included. I've not really touched on the path system, mainly because it just boils down to another type of quest, but I will say that they offer a welcome break from relentless questing. One thing's for sure, however, the game has options. It has options for its options. I've never felt restricted by a class I've played, or the skills I've chosen. Although, class diversity is not as strong as it perhaps could be. Due to the telegraph system, all melee characters felt very similar, as did the ranged. They may have different moves, but a conal melee attack is a conal melee attack. They attempted to differentiate these moves, making them some static, some mobile, some channeled, etc. But much like other MMO combat systems, it's hard to make every class feel truly unique and interesting. The game looks stunning. Rather than the pseudo-realistic approach many MMOs have taken recently, WildStar has very much created an entire world, a living, breathing, believable world with a cartoony aesthetic, and that's quite an achievement. exploring Nexus, discovering hidden caverns, climbing to the highest peak. No MMO has driven me to do this kind of thing, but WildStar most definitely has. The endgame content is focused on large 40-man events, be it war plots or raids. This grand vision of theirs could be shut down before it's even had a chance to get off the ground if the content from level 30 to 50 does not captivate its audience. I say this because at one point getting to the endgame would have always been the goal within an MMO for a lot of people. It's just hard to justify so much time grinding when time is a limited resource. I have no doubt many players will enjoy the leveling experience. I very much did, up till level 20. But is there enough to go another 30 levels? We'll have to wait and see. WildStar is the first MMO I've had an interest in quite some time. It's a refreshing take on the traditional systems that were so much in need of an overhaul. It makes for some really captivating gameplay, both solo and group. I just hope the game's leveling experience does not hurt it. It's by no means bad, but I'd put it on par with how World of Warcraft leveling was during Wrath, and then some maybe due to the inclusion of path quests. I don't want WildStar to suffer the same fate of many MMORPGs before it. The support and enthusiasm from the developers, however, is fantastic, and I have no doubt they will continue to support this game and pour endless amounts of due care and attention into it. As WildStar is an MMO, I have undoubtedly not discussed a fair amount of what the game has to offer. If you've got an interest in this game and would like more information, you should take a look at the game's official website and forums.